Fascinating. This is Gabrielle Ruiz, and you are watching TrekCulture.
Boldly going. Yeah, it's in it's been a project that has been kind of on my back burner for about, when did it start? April 1st, 2011. I'll take you back there. So a while ago. Yeah. And to give you a little bit of setup to it, I lost 91% of my vision to childhood cancer when I was a baby. And so I see about 9%, and it's like looking down a straw. Imagine that. So one eye, my right eye is artificial, so I don't see out of that. And then already like looking down a straw, and then imagine floaters and flashers and all sorts of distortions as a result of radiation. And that's just been my normal my whole life. And I have three older brothers who are all fully sighted, and I went to a integrated school. So I learned to fake it really well. I learned to fake being a sighted kid, even though I was wearing heavy Coke bottle glasses. But in high school, I got a contact lens, so I could look like a fully sighted kid and kind of fit in as best as I could. And it worked for me for a while. But I would constantly come up against these barriers of I'm not being able to do that. And I loved visual art. Like I was always doodling, drawing cartoons. My dad was a cartoonist and a comic book collector and a sci-fi nerd. And, he just was always encouraging all of his boys and my mom too, just to be creative and have that output. And in high school, I had an art class and very serious conversation with my art teacher who said, Bruce, I just don't know if there's a career for a blind visual artist. I can't think of a post-secondary institution that would know how to teach you. And also I think it's just going to be too difficult. So maybe think of something else. And I immediately gravitated towards performing because it's all about pretending to be somebody else. So I could pretend to be sighted on stage and I would get cast in roles as sighted people. But there was always this kind of undercurrent of thinking about the world in different perspectives. How do I see? How do I pretend to be sighted? Can I see like other sighted people? And then flash forward a number of years where I'd gotten into a career and I had pretended to be sighted. Nobody really knew about my visual impairment to maybe my close friends, but outside of that circle, it was always like, he can't see very well. Bruce, yeah, he can't see very well, but he'll be fine. And I got an audition for a movie called Blindness. I was in Toronto and my agent called and he's like, they're making this movie. It's a worldwide pandemic. Everybody goes blind, based on a really great book. Sidebar, check it out. I got excited and I'm like, oh, great. I want to go up and play this blind guy. And my agent was like, yeah, but you don't really look blind. You have to look more blind for this audition. Now, in Canada, there is an organization called the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, which was started in, I want to say just after World War One. Sidebar, I just played the founder of the Canadian National Institute for the Blind in a Heritage Minute, Edwin A. Baker. Anyway, I've been a client since I was a kid, and I went to the CNIB in Toronto, and I was like, can I get a white cane? And they're like, absolutely. First one's free. You're a client, so here's your cane. And they showed me how to use it. So there I am, 33 years old with my first white cane, thinking I'm going to be a target, I'm going to get beat up or whatever. And I'm walking down Yonge Street in Toronto with my cane and my orientation and mobility specialist who's walking with me. And I got my head up and I got my shoulders back and I'm using this white cane and it's like parting of the Red Sea. People jumping out of my way, people leaping up to help. Cars were, instead of cutting me off, they would see the cane and they would stop and slow down. Really changed my life. Saved my life on a number of occasions. And I started to use it in my real life. And friends would be like, so why, like, how do you see? Like, what's been going on? And I sat down with one friend, April 1st, 2011, and tried to paint his portrait to interpret to him how I see. And as luck would have it, I got accepted into an art show in Toronto, and I just kept painting and painting and painting. I painted 365 portraits in my first year. And I would finish the portrait and give my subject my glasses to look at the painting through and get really close to it. And they would see the distortions and the auras that I see in the canvas. And I just kept going with this project. And then I started meeting people outside of my immediate circle and then larger and larger. And Star Trek came along. And I've been painting portraits of people all over the world over Zoom now. And just finished portrait number 750. Sat with William Shatner in Los Angeles about 2 months ago. He sat down for a portrait and we got talking and I told him a bit of my story and about using the cane. And he's like, wow, this is interesting. Somebody should make a documentary about your life. And I was like, well, as luck would have it, Mr. Shatner, Ballinran Entertainment in Stratford, Ontario approached me about producing Boldly Going, which is to document the push towards 1,000 portraits and to document the incredible people that I've met, tell their stories, talk about overcoming adversity, leading the life of the creative, and hopefully continuing to inspire other people with these stories that have largely gone untold. I love that anecdote. I don't know if this is a true story, but when Patrick Stewart was cast as Captain Picard and was on a panel with Roddenberry, and they're like, "Yeah, but don't you think in the future they'd have a cure for baldness?"
Mm.
And Roddenberry's like, "I think in the future no one will actually care."
Yeah, I love that one as well because because we'll have other things where like it's like oh my goodness, can Hemmer see? I don't know, can he do his job?
Yeah,
like if he can do his job, leave him at it. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Plus as well, like I now like to think that 20 years ago, when they were writing the Enars into Enterprise, it's just they're setting up Strange New Worlds. They knew 20 years ago. They knew.
I like your imagination.
I'm just waiting for the moment where you confirm that you will be appearing in season 3 and season 4, and you mentioned season 5 as well. Hopefully not the Hemmer hitting the ground in season 5, but I mean, is this the moment? Is this where you confirm
it? No, I cannot confirm. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Cannot confirm is not a no. I like that. I suppose it begs, because I'm sure everyone asks you the same question. If Hemmer were to appear in some way, or what, is there something you would like to see done that maybe hasn't been done yet? I mean, Stranger Worlds has done a lot. It's had like 97 different genres in 20 episodes.
Wow. Yeah.
But is there something you'd like to, maybe through the lens of Hemmer, see it?
Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it? Like the sort of alien eye view, how he works with that. I mean, I would love to see a version of blindness on Star Trek where the whole crew goes blind and there's Hemmer at the charge. Just to flip that book around a little bit would be really interesting. I'm just really curious about, and this sort of pops up when we were shooting the episode where Hemmer and Uhura are stuck in the cargo bay, and he talks about being a pacifist and getting into Starfleet, and that seems to be sort of a major arc in the Enterprise episodes about the Enar as well, as their decision to remain passive. Yeah, and just the story of like, how do you go from that into joining a semi-militaristic organization? I mean, they're all armed, scientific, of course, and all of that. But it's like, yeah, there's still some damage that's out there, and just the journey to get to that. I would find that interesting, and yeah, just more Enar, more Hemmer.
Yeah, it's such a forgive me for going obvious here, such a blank canvas.
Sure.
When it comes to the Enar, there's so many directions it can go in, and now the season 2 completed there with some Gorn appearances. Oh, I think a reckoning doesn't have to be a violent one, as Hemmer's a pacifist, but a reckoning there. I'd
like to see that.
Yeah. I suppose Star Trek is wonderful for many, many reasons, but also, yes, this platform that does come from a sort of built-in audience. Now, obviously you're creating this beautiful art, you're sharing it with the world, and have you felt sort of a direct impact from, say, the Star Trek audience coming over into that now as well?
Oh yeah, very much so. I have a Patreon account that I started probably 15 years ago, and I'd say for the majority of it, it was my mom and my aunt, which is great.
and we thank them. Yep.
And absolutely. The thing that Patreon taught me was just accountability. Every month I had to put out a newsletter, and I was putting out work and mailing out. I do little Patreon watercolor cards that I mail out every month. And, for a while it was fine. I would do 2 or 3 cards a month and mail them off. And then Star Trek happened, and I now have like 50 patrons. And that is exponentially increased the accountability, which I love. Like now there's people that are responding on it and going, and it's all Star Trek stuff. So, and also I have to mention a little bit of Star Trek every month, which is not a burden in the slightest, because I've always just either watched something. I've either just watched, ingested some Star Trek. It might be an audiobook or something Star Trek adjacent. and it's very easy to just go, yeah, here's what I'm reading right now, and surprise, surprise. Um, but yeah, that reaching out, and then through social media too. I mean, it's kind of it's just out there, like how much love there is for that character, and yeah, my eternal gratitudes to the writers for writing his death cool.
That is, I mean, that is true. I mean, I'm sad the death happened, but it was a good one.
It was a good one. It was a very good one.
What's made kind of 2025 the year that this is when we're going to do this?
Well, it's time to do it. I'm nearing in on 1,000 portraits. That seems like a really nice marker for it. Every 100 portraits, I do a self portrait. So I have a kind of a really nice marking of the change and the practice, and hopefully getting better at it. Yeah, and I feel like there's this cultural shift towards the conversations around disability. And I have very, very slowly over my time accepted my own disability and been more, comfortable talking about it and talking with other people about it. And I find the disability arts community to be really, very encouraging. And one of the, about 3 or 4 years, no, gosh, this is pre-pandemic. Time's elastic, Sean. I had a showing of my work at a gallery in Toronto called Tangled Art and Disability, which is a disability arts organization. They have beautiful gallery space and a studio space in downtown Toronto, and they invited me for a month-long residency in their studio to paint portraits. And then I did an installation of, well, what were there? There were like 260 of the portraits on one wall in one big grid. They're all 8x10, so they look really nice together. And then some of my larger works as well. And Sean Lee, who is the curator of that gallery, and I had coffee together before I started my residency, talking, and I was speaking about my process and how, I really want to paint so that so that sighted people will know how a visually impaired person sees. And that had been kind of my MO for 600 portraits. And Sean, who is just brilliant at flipping perspectives, says, okay, well, all right. So let's look at the outcome of it, and let's think about the patrons who are coming to the gallery, and how can you further make your work accessible to our patrons who are disabled people. Some of them, are deaf. Some of them are wheelchair users, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a very broad spectrum that Tangled works with. So I started to record the audio for all of the sittings. And instead of me doing an audio description of the painting for someone who's visually impaired, I had my sitters, I would say, so describe yourself to someone who can't see. And I would take that piece of audio and I would link it with the next piece of audio. So on the grid, you would just hear all these people describing themselves to the listener, to the subject, to the viewer of it. I started to work in tactile painting as well. So I would create a work and then I would use hot glue to do the outline so the piece could be touched. And I would use different mediums within the painting. So it was a fully tactile experience, just taking the painting off the canvas a little bit and moving it more towards the disability community, who I'm very proudly a part of, but who I also feel compelled to serve as well and tell their stories. Sean expressed this really beautiful phrase, which I deeply treasure. He said that it used to be that art was considered good for disability, and at Tangled we believe that disability is good for art.
I love that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the journey to accepting my own disability and being willing and excited to share that has been a long one. Has been a challenge for sure. I can't say that it has always been easy. However, the long arc of the story seems to indicate that an acceptance of the limitations doesn't mean that they hold you back. It's just how you move forward with them. And I'm just curious to meet other creatives and to see what gets them going and what gets their spark going in the morning when it feels like, why am I doing this? And how absurd is it that a blind man is painting portraits? Like, is the joke over, or do we go deeper into this? And is there something is there something at the base of the cave that we can shine a flashlight on?
I mean, I love that phrasing there. Like, is the joke over? Because there is a novelty, if you don't mind me saying, to the idea of a blind person, I say technically, because we've spoken about it, working in what is a visual medium, but the way you're describing it, it's more of an kind of a complete media interactive experience, as much as it is also beautiful paintings.
I hope so, yeah, and not to be afraid of the technology of it. I mean, I do love like the sort of analog nature of acrylic paint on canvas. There's something really, yeah, it's just beautiful and tactile in that. And sitting in the room with somebody and having that actual interaction. And when the pandemic hit, I thought, well, that's it. The portrait series is done. Like, I'm not going to sit with anybody ever again. And really, once we got into the Zoom platform and I got more comfortable doing it, and I realized as well, like, actually, there's benefits to this. Now, when I turn on the camera and I meet someone for the first time, they're sitting in their most comfortable chair, in their most comfortable room, and they're, like we have adapted to this format. And in a studio situation, oftentimes it takes 15 or 20 minutes just to get the person to relax. I'm going to make a cup of tea and just, they got to get comfortable, and then it's like, how long can I sit? And am I comfortable enough, and take breaks and all that? But there's an immediacy to the Zoom that sitting in the room doesn't have, and vice versa.
If you don't mind me asking, you mentioned, of course, your journey with accepting and coming to terms with your own disability. Now, I will straight away admit that because you mentioned it's childhood cancer, part of me was like, oh, well, you must have accepted it for years and years and years now. But has it been that case, or is it still, say, an ongoing journey, if you don't mind talking about that?
I don't mind talking about that at all. It's very much an ongoing journey. Daily I recognize certain limitations in my vision, and as I get older, it's changing. The print books are harder and harder for me to read, and so I've moved into audiobooks, which aren't the same. For sure. I get the stories, but I tend to fall asleep, and you can't really fall asleep reading a book. Like, you're not going to keep reading past the point where you fall asleep. Whereas with audiobooks, sure, I don't remember where I was. And anyway, and some of the performances at times you're like, maybe not exactly the voice you want to hear. But so that joy has, because I was a huge reader growing up. I just would devour books, and then I got into large print stuff about 2 or 3 years ago, and that's nice because, yeah, there is something about your own imagination being activated by the words on the page, and that. It's I'm certainly further along in the acceptance than I was. There's still a level of what's the word? Not discomfort, but I find myself really measuring when I have to speak up about what I can't see, and when I don't have to do that.
Thank you so much for watching this abbreviated version of this podcast. Now, if you go to our audio platforms, you will get the full version of this podcast with this guest. So we really, really appreciate you subscribing to that, and you're just awesome and wonderful. Thank you so much.